If you would please start tell me by telling me how you found out about the Jim Nantz Award and putting together your reel for it.
Yeah, I don't specifically remember what led me to it, but I came across it online at some point, presumably the first semester of college, some point my freshman year of college, certainly. And I don't know what led me there. In fact, if I were to guess, it would be that going into college, I was sort of obsessed with the Cape Cod Baseball League, which I had been an obsession of mine going back quite some time for baseball fan reasons, and then morphed into also an obsession of I want to spend a summer of college broadcasting there. And I don't remember if it was after getting the job, if I was just interviewing, whatever, but in the course of researching the Orleans Firebirds job, which I ended up doing that following summer, I most likely came across the two guys who had done it 2 summers prior in 2013, who were Kevin Fitzgerald, who then went on to win the Nantz Award, I guess, in 14. And he would have been the reigning winner my freshman year. And then Sam Levitt, who coincidentally enough then went on to be the voice of the Gateway Grizzlies, which I followed him in doing. But we didn't know each other at all at that point in time. I came across Kevin first. That would be my guess. And that led me to this whole world of SCAA at all, and the Nantz Award more specifically. And calling that then an obsession would probably not be fair, especially compared to the Cape Cod stuff. But it gave me a serious sense of direction and a sense of, I think, healthy competition as well, as far as being able to see what other people were doing all around the country who were my age. I think there's something to be said for that, of using that to get better. Not necessarily in a competition sense either, partially just in a community sense. Because especially going to Missouri, I think a lot of people rightfully think of Missouri as a great and historic journalism school, but it really does not produce a lot of play-by-play talent, or has not historically, and doesn't have a play-by-play specific education track within the school in the way that you might find at Syracuse or now at Ball State or at probably plenty of other schools that I'm forgetting. And so it was an opportunity to see what does it look like for kids who are freshmen, sophomores, on through seniors at Syracuse, at Ball State, at Northwestern, at Arizona State, and then kids who come from schools that you wouldn't have thought of as broadcasting powerhouses necessarily, because there are plenty of those kids who also do some really really great work. I mean, I don't think anybody had South Florida pegged as an elite caliber sports broadcasting school, and Josh Appel came in and won it either the next year, or I guess it would have been the year after in 2016, my sophomore year. But so I think it just became a great resource for me, and SDAA certainly has been that for many, many people, college or otherwise. But the award program itself became a really healthy thing and a way for me to be exposed to more of what was going on at colleges across the country, and to be exposed to more of my peers, and plenty of guys whose work I at least got to know when I was 18, 19, who have now grown into being genuine friends and are still my peers in now the sort of early professional stages of the industry.
And then, so getting your reel together for it, take me through that process.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. I spent a lot of time watching other reels, especially from people who have won. To this day, I produced a lot of demo reels. By far, the most watched thing on my YouTube channel is my Nantz Award reel, and I'm assuming for that reason, even though it's quite a long way old now and no longer particularly relevant to stuff that I'm doing. I don't send that to anybody. I haven't for years. But it still gets, especially when we get toward this time of year, March, April, it gets a lot of hits again. I'm assuming the same would be true of a lot of people who have placed highly, because I remember doing the same thing. And I think then just the advice that John gives on building that was the first time I really thought about, what do I actually do to make a good demo? And I think that's the kind of thing that has continued on, because as much as we're also learning the fundamentals of play-by-play, we'll get into this later, I'm sure, but when you get to the stage that I'm at now, and plenty of people who are younger than I am and older than I am, they're thinking about building demo reels that are going to catch the eyes of potential employers, catch the eyes of potential agents, catch the eyes of whomever. And especially if you're doing TV work, a lot of times you have a very, very short period of time to capture somebody's attention, and also to give them what they really want to see. Because what John wanted to see taught me what play-by-play guys want. which is if you're going to put a play-by-play segment in there, it's got to be 6+ unedited minutes. And I wouldn't have thought of that as an 18 or 19-year-old. And so that was a big piece. Then as I've continued to grow up through it, it taught me to keep paying attention to what's important in demo reels. And you learn that the demo reel that I'm sending to, some network TV guy or some Major League Baseball guy to get his feedback is different than the demo I'm sending to some coordinating producer or to some potential agent or whatever, because they want to see totally different things. They want 2 to 3 minutes. They want the highlights real quick. They want on camera, and they can wait for another day to watch all the unedited stuff. I'm sure they'll get to it. They'll probably watch a lot eventually if they're very interested in somebody, but they don't have the time to sit there for an hour or 2 hours and watch some random guy's work. They want to get to it right away. So I think it was both the skills of what STAA actually wanted in the demo, and then also learning that the way you put together the demo and the way you present your work is maybe not equally important, but also important in the process, and at least a strong number 2 behind the quality of the work itself in the first place. So that's again, and that's kind of a recurring theme for me in this, is that what I'm really thankful for in the end was the process and what I learned about how to get better myself, how to present myself, all of these sorts of things that then become foundation for skills that go far beyond any time in college and any award specifically. So I think that's part of the beauty of it too, is that a lot of these things, you might not be calling me and we might not have met, but if I had come in 2nd or 7th or 15th or whatever, all of these things could have still served me well going forward. And it's probably part of the reason that plenty of people who have placed much lower or haven't placed at all or whatever have gone on to very successful careers as well.
Now, had you applied and sent your reel in before the year you won?
Yes, I send something in every year. My first year, it was audio only, and I don't even remember what would have been on it at that point. I think it probably had baseball tape from the summer after I graduated high school, which was spent doing a tiny college summer league in St. Louis that no longer exists. That was the second of 3 years of its operations. And I did probably 100 games that summer, in addition to sometimes running the music and doing the PA and doing the official scoring all at the same time. I lined some fields. I ordered some lunch. I called some umpires who were not there yet. I did all that stuff at one point or another. And the tape I still have a little bit of tape from that summer. It's a true disaster. And I was not mentioned anywhere in anything placed or honorable mention or anything. And that's completely unsurprising. But I just through the process, I got exposure to what is John looking for. I had another year to then put that in place as I got more opportunities, including in the Cape Cod Baseball League, turned out that next year in the summer of 2015. And I had some of that tape on probably the half inning. Every Cape League broadcaster, or at least most, gets the chance to do 1 inning of TV on Fox College Sports, because they have a package, or at least they did at the time. I assume they still do, where they would show, 8 to 12 Cape League games any given summer, and the home team's broadcaster would get to do 1 inning during the course of that game. And so I probably sent that in, and then some D3 college basketball from a school near Mizzou, because I wasn't happy with only getting 1 or 2 games with student radio. And so the next year I sent in a much better reel in terms of quality, in terms of diversity of what was showcased. And I placed with it. And then my junior year turned out to be the last year I could have applied anyway, because I graduated a semester early the following December, and I wouldn't have been eligible my senior year. And that last year, the reel had Mizzou baseball TV stuff from the first spring that I did digital TV stuff at Mizzou with SEC Network Plus. It had some D2 basketball I was doing for Lincoln University, which is a school in Jefferson City, about half hour or so from Mizzou's campus. And maybe something else, although I don't recall, probably an open of some kind too that was in there. So it goes to show you that it's sort of, the process has so many parts, and the ways that I improved were across the board, not only my ability to work on air, but the opportunities I was then able to accrue. The quality of broadcast I was doing was much, much higher, whether it's a higher level of play or a higher production value or whatever. And then learning how to put together a demo reel. And I think those 3 things working in concert mean that basically every kid who puts any kind of effort into applying for the award over the course of a college career is going to get way better, regardless of where you end up placing or anything else. So that's what I really remember about applying for it over and over, is that it was, I mean, only 3 times, but the way that I was able to make such significant strides. And I think that's something I almost reminisce about or have nostalgia about from the very beginning when I was first starting out. Not that I'm not still very early in my career, but at this point, I've learned most of what the fundamentals of play-by-play are. I'm still trying to get better at them, but I almost miss being a year, in my second baseball season ever, or my third baseball season ever. And you could still get a tip from a minor league or major league play-by-play guy who would say, here's this fundamental that all of us know about baseball play-by-play that you're just not doing because you don't know about it. And it can change, not overnight, but within a span of a couple of weeks, your tape can get 5 times better. And that's just not reality anymore for once you've been doing it for quite a few years, as I'm sure anybody knows. That's probably the same in any profession. The curve sort of goes up really, really fast, and then your progress starts to flatten out. And that last 10% is the most important part, of course, but it's also the slowest to get, and it can feel at times like you're not progressing a lot. And that's the great thing about the Nantz Award. And I would imagine if you ask John Chalesnik, who runs SCAA, he would tell you that's a really rewarding part for him, is to watch the jumps that people can make. And I think I'm a perfect example. I went from not getting any recognition at all, so outside the top 30, 35, however many get honorable mention, past the top 20, to 18th my sophomore year, to number 1 my junior year. And there are plenty of people who have followed similar paths. And I think at the end of the day, that's the ultimate service that the Nantz Award does to the industry. It not only encourages and showcases college broadcasters, but it helps them develop themselves at a rate that they probably would not be able to, or wouldn't have the inclination to otherwise. As much as I appreciate the student radio stuff that I did, and it was very important for me, and I made a lot of great friends doing it and all of that, I think the most important thing for me, as it is for anybody during college and during the early part of my career, was getting a ton of reps, doing a ton of games. And the only way I was able to do that was by doing stuff in the summers, which included summer college baseball, and then starting the Grizzlies in independent ball my last summer of college. And then during the school year by doing D3 and D2 stuff for other schools around the area, where I was working for free, at least in the early part of that. But I was able to do every home game. I did Westminster College men's basketball, which is D3 school. And then I did Lincoln football and men's basketball for a couple of years. And that was huge. At Mizzou, because the student station is university owned, it has to be completely equal opportunity. So we can't do something like, in July, all the juniors and seniors are sending in their football tapes, and we're going to pick, 3 people to do football play-by-play, and they're going to rotate, and then we're going to have 3 people who are the analysts, and they're going to rotate, whatever. We can't do something like that. Or I know at Ball State, for example, they pick one kid who's going to be the student radio men's basketball and women, voice, and one guy who's going to be the women's basketball voice. That's just not, we don't get to do it that way. And so I would have been looking at 1 football game every fall, maybe 2 or 3 basketball games every winter. And that just wasn't going to be enough to get better. And the thing that I always take away from it, and that I tell any college kid who asks me, is that the quality of the game in front of you really does not matter. Whether it's, Mizzou plays way higher quality basketball than Westminster College does, or even than Lincoln University does, but it does not make a difference to the tape. You can produce terrible tape doing great basketball, or vice versa. I know Chuck Swirsky, the radio voice of the Chicago Bulls, always says that to him, the greatest thing he can hear and the greatest endorsement he can give of a broadcaster is listening to the guy do a high school game and feel like he did a great job, because it's so much harder. And I've never done any high school sports as far as I can think of, and it sounds like a nightmare to me, because if you think the information you have at the D3 level is limited, at a lot of high schools, especially in central Missouri, if you go to some of the smaller high schools, you're getting next to nothing. And he always says, and I would be inclined to agree, even without necessarily having firsthand experience, that that's the hardest place to sound good. And if you can do that, it's only going to get easier for you as you move up the ranks, any further opportunities you get. So that's the takeaway that I always have. I know it's only somewhat related to the actual question, but it was good that I was getting out of Mizzou and out of that community so much, because that was what enabled me to get on the air for at the very least dozens of games per year, even outside of the summer stuff, which is the typical college broadcaster grind time because it's that gap in the academic schedule.
Right. And then talk about, if you would, the awards weekend. You get to come to Winston-Salem. I mean, we were coming here for the first time. We didn't know what to expect. I'm guessing you didn't know what to expect either.
I really did not. I remember, I knew that it had not been in Winston-Salem in the past. And I remember meeting a couple who lived near Catawba and had been going for a while when it had been there. And them talking about having met Jim when he had been down there in the past, when he had probably gotten a Sportscaster of the Year award, I'm assuming. And that was really fun. It felt like there were a lot of people there who were passionate about the event, which was cool to see. I wouldn't have necessarily seen that coming from people who were not invitees or who were not broadcasters or sports writers. I would have expected a lot of people passionate about the industry to be there and therefore passionate about the event. But to see people outside the industry who were also passionate about it was very cool. I really liked Winston-Salem. I know you won't be able to pick it out of your window this time, but I told you I have a really soft spot for that ballpark. It's on my mental list of the top 10 or 20 probably in minor league baseball that I'd really like to go to for a game. I've been by it, but not when there was anything going on. I really the event was a lot more fun than I expected. I thought it would be rewarding and worthwhile. And it was, in the sense too, that for me and for my parents who were both there, which was really nice, it was sort of a capstone, I think, to my college experience, because, as is probably obvious, considering that I ended up graduating with a political science degree, my time in college and my college education was much more about broadcasting than it was about academics. Not to discount the academic side at all, because I had a lot of great professors and I had a lot of things academically that I enjoyed, but I always viewed that as sort of something that I was doing almost for fun. And to get the degree, like, to me, the broadcasting stuff was what I saw translating into a career.
Right.
And so in many ways that was like I actually didn't go to my college graduation. It was because it was in December. I just wasn't feeling it. Never did it. That was my college graduation for me and for my parents, which we sort of thought of it that way at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really cool capstone. But then beyond that, to get to interact with a lot of people in the industry and to realize, first of all, how easy it was to form friendships with those people, whether they were high profile national or big market kind of people working at the top level, or whether they were D2, D3 college voices or high school guys working in smaller markets, whatever.
Right.
That we could form great relationships based on our passion for the industry. And that was enough to sort of spark something, which helped inform. I think I already had a background of this at the time, but it certainly further helps form my sort of overall philosophy on networking, which is that I don't like to do formalized networking. That if I'm reaching out to people, it's not to form a connection, it's to try to, in a very non-cheesy way, make a friend, just a casual friend, not somebody we're going to like hang out with and I'm going to text and call them all the time, but just somebody I can say, not, oh, I know that guy, he's a connection of mine. Like, he's just a friend, right? We're friendly. It's not a very high standard. You can be friendly with lots of people who are, say, your coworkers in an office who you don't hang out with on the weekends or whatever. Like, you just are friendly when you see them. And I think it can be much the same. We don't have coworkers in broadcasting for the most part who are other broadcasters, at least not a lot of whom we see on a regular basis, like people who have a traditional office type job.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have many colleagues. And I think in some ways, the fact that we don't come together in a centralized office 9 to 5 on a regular basis makes it more important to form those connections and be able to talk to each other about things that can be hard to connect with your regular everyday friends, because they're just not good. They don't want you talking about broadcasting all the time because they don't care. And then they also are they're not going to understand certain things in the same way. So I think forming relationships that start with the shared experiences that we have and the shared passions that we have is always a good and organic and authentic way to start. And I learned a lot of that there at the awards weekend, and just how fun it was, just how enthusiastic people were to be there. And probably feeding off that last point, how it didn't feel stiff and like some kind of networking mixer. It felt organic. And I think that was because the passion for the industry was genuine and people were able to connect that way. It didn't feel forced. It was just simple and easy, and that again applied to any number of people. I didn't actually meet him there, but he was there, and we didn't meet, but we met electronically shortly thereafter. And I've been able to form a really good relationship with Ian Eagle, who in sports broadcasting is a household name, I would say. But I pointed out to you last time when you asked a question about people I met and things there, that Jared Welbrock was also somebody I came away with massive respect for, and he is definitely not a household name, right? He is in Hays, Kansas, I would imagine, doing Fort Hays State, and they're a very big deal and outstanding D2 football and basketball programs, but he certainly doesn't have the national recognition among sports fans that Ian Eagle does. But I had very rewarding conversations with both of them, and we were able to connect on all different kinds of parts of the industry. Jared and we had actually overlapped already because Lincoln basketball plays in the same conference as Fort Hays. So we had never done the same game at the same time because Fort Hays had not come to Jeff City that year, but we had been at the conference tournament together. And he was actually, it turned out, seated like a couple of seats away from me, but we had just never interacted. You know how it is at conference tournaments where the radio crews are just all lined up, especially at a D2 tournament where the writers are far more limited. So all the radio guys are basically just forming a ring around the court. They're like, 8 of those tables, and then you trade out every once in a while, whatever. So that's kind of long-winded, but I would say it was multifaceted in all the things that I took out of it. Some of them very concrete about the industry and very sort of what you'd expect from a networking event. Some of them just fun. And then some of them for me and my family really rewarding, in a sort of selfish way of like, this is putting a cap on something that I really did put a lot of time into during the course of college in the way that I feel a degree would be for quite a lot of people. It was a very, very cool experience, and I would certainly strongly encourage any winner to go, and to be able to go, if possible, with some family members, because I think that made it really special, because certainly we know that in order to succeed, especially at that age in broadcasting or in sports writing or in whatever else, it's going to take usually quite a lot of support from parents, going all the way back to not laughing at it from when I was 4 or 5 years old and said, this is what I wanted to do, and not say, no, you're going to go to law school. Thank you very much for trying. So I think they deserve to be there as much or more than I deserve to be there. And that was really special too.
Did anybody come up to you after your speech and congratulate you?
Yeah, as I remember, quite a few people did, especially when we were at the bar afterward. And that was when I got to spend some time with John Anderson, who was there, and he is one of relatively few high-profile sports broadcasting Mizzou alums. There are more if you get into the kind of anchor reporting track than there are in the play-by-play track. But that was a really fun conversation to get to spend some time with him. I remember spending time also with Bob Rathman and Steve Holman, specifically from the Atlanta Hawks, both of whom I've since sent a bunch of tape to. I remember talking to Bob Miller, who was there because he was getting, I think it was Lifetime Achievement Award, because that was his last year with the LA Kings. He was outgoing, which of course is interesting. And I don't remember. I think he came up to me to say something to the effect of he was holding me responsible for stealing his job as the representative of Nantz Award winners, and Alex Faust was coming in to take over for him. And the conversation went something like that. I don't remember his exact words, but I remember him saying that I was being held responsible as the delegate from the Nantz winners, as though I were there at the UN representing our very small island nation. He was really funny. Before and after, during the panels and stuff, getting a chance to hear from Verducci, Mike Lupica, Bob Ryan. I actually took the elevator up to my hotel room when I first checked in with Bob Ryan, so that was fun. I had literally, no joke, I didn't know he was going to be there. I had his book in my backpack. I had been reading it on a plane. So yeah, and that was, the big name guys are the ones, worth mentioning here. But again, that my takeaway was as much about the people that most sports fans would not have heard of, and how much I took from them. For instance, one of the most influential conversations I remember having there was with Steve Klauke, who does the Salt Lake Bees, the Angels AAA, and then he does Weber State football and basketball. And he had this great line. He said to take the job seriously, but not take yourself seriously. And I think that's a perfect piece of advice for a 21-year-old kid who at that time had been all about achieve, achieve, achieve. Let's see, what's the next thing I can do? What's the next thing I can do? How fast can I do this? That none of what you're doing and putting effort and care into this profession is a bad thing. You should take it seriously. You should want to get after it and improve yourself and try to do do the job right by the players, by the fans. That all that being said, if that turns you into either an arrogant jerk because you're successful, or a pessimistic jerk because you're not successful, or just someone who's so obsessed with himself and his profession that no one wants to be around you and you're a scourge on your family and friends and whomever, then what has this really been about anyway? And I think all of that is important perspective that, no one in his position can be expected to bestow upon a 21-year-old and have it click like that. But it's the kind of thing that you hear and sticks in the back of your brain as you start to have experiences that lead you in that direction anyway. I think you are quick to accept it. I might not have at the time thought, oh, that's huge advice. I need to really take that into my day-to-day life. So I thought, okay, whatever, Steve. You got a funny line and you're saying it to me. Great, good for you. But then, you have a few things happen and you start to realize, his advice kind of rings true here. I think that probably would have helped me if I'd gone into this situation thinking that a little bit more. And I think at that point, even if I haven't had anywhere near his wealth of experience to fully understand what he meant when he said it, I think at that point you start to think, maybe I should just accept his advice is right. And I should just move forward, assuming that he's right about this. And then we'll look back after. And if I need to change my mind, I can change my mind at a later date.
All right, that piece of advice, go back a couple of years and now tell me, what advice would you give somebody who is in your position or the position you were in 2017?
Yeah, I would say something similar, but I would be a little bit more pointed. I would say, don't expect that this really means anything. Like, take out of it what it is, which is that you've done some good things here and you deserve to be here and you should be proud of what you've done. You should certainly use the opportunity to meet all of these people who are going to have great things to tell you. And you should certainly use it as encouragement to think that, I think any Nantz winner and anybody who's probably in the top 10 or top 20 or anywhere can make a career in this business if they want it badly enough. But you shouldn't assume that this is like, rolling out the red carpet to some kind of fancy job and perfect career that's just going to keep on moving, linear right up the graph. It's just not like that. You didn't graduate number one from Harvard Med or Harvard Law or whatever and walking straight into your fancy job. You're going to be grinding in a different way, because now instead of competing against all the 18 to 22-year-olds in the country, which is a lot of kids, and you should be proud for having placed among the top group. I'm not taking anything away from that. I am proud of it. I certainly was at the time. But you got to remember, now you're competing, whether it's for a minor league job, against everybody, 21 to 28 or older, depending on the job. If you're applying for a AAA job, you could easily be competing against somebody 40, 50 years old. And certainly if and when you get the chance to start applying for top level jobs, you're going to be competing against absolutely everyone. And that's a very different competition field. And a lot of those employers are not going to really care if you won the Nantz Award. In fact, if you won it too recently, it can look bad on a press release. They're saying, what are they doing hiring this kid who was just in college last year or the year before? Why was he winning collegiate awards? Is he 23? Like, this guy's a child. So I think that would, my advice, not to be too negative, my advice would just be realize what this is in positive terms, and in terms of not getting too positive and too caught up in, I've already accomplished whatever I need to accomplish. Now everyone should just worship at my feet and the red carpet will be rolled out. It should be something, there she is, something more like approaching things still as though you have everything left to earn, right? That you've earned nothing. You earned this, and this was just what it is, and now it's over. And you move on to the next chapter where you have to earn everything all over again. and realizing that now it's going to be harder. That kind of improvement year over year, like I talked about, whether it's on air or whether it's in some kind of ranking system, is not going to be as easy because your improvement now is going to be more important, but in much smaller steps, and it's going to be much harder, and it's going to take a lot of intensive effort. And there are a lot of people who are usually there to support somebody through that journey, whether it's people who are in your everyday life or broadcasting people who are going to help you get better. But realize that laying out an entire step-by-step plan in the way that I might have had a plan my freshman year. Okay, I'll learn the ropes this year. I'll place next year. I'll win it the year after that, whatever. That's much easier to do at that stage when college existence is sort of in a year by year, right? I had one job the summer before college. I had another job the next summer, moved up the next summer, moved up the next summer. And all of a sudden you realize, wait, it's really hard to move up after that, And so I think not getting too wrapped up in, I need to make tangible, constant jumps, especially in the job market, because there are just too many variables, and trusting that the important thing is to keep getting better and to try to put yourself in a position that when you eventually get the kind of good luck that any of us needs in order to eventually succeed, that you can take advantage of it. That if all your good luck is that eventually you get the chance to fill in for one game with some team 5 years down the road, you better be ready to take advantage of that one game. Because if you don't, that chance might not come again. I think you have to live with the optimism of assuming you'll get one chance, but with the pragmatism of never assuming you'll get a second.
Alex talked about that today. He said he had his one NHL game.
Yeah.
It happened to be an overtime game, and he took full advantage of that and led to it.
Yeah, and look at that. Then he stole Bob Miller's job, huh?
He stole Bob Miller's job.
Right out from under him.
Achievement guy.
Yeah.
So talk about your career now and what you did once you graduated and were ready to get into the job market.
Yeah, I've done a bunch of things since graduating, mainly because freelancing, especially if you're trying to get a foot in the door in the TV world, it is very, very common, just because of how a lot of TV productions are happening now. But I've done Grizzlies baseball continuing on this season. If it does happen, would be my fourth. I've done the last 3 years. I've done any number of Mizzou Olympic sports, just about all of them: baseball, softball, soccer, volleyball, women's basketball, over the last 3 years, intermittently, going back to spring of 17. And then this past year, I've started picking up some more freelance TV stuff, including football and men's basketball at Western Kentucky, which I was really excited about, and some Olympic sports at Ohio State, and sort of building a portfolio that way, which is, has its pros and cons. It can be inconsistent, and it involves a lot of constantly sort of being your own advocate, and not only advocating for yourself, but also being your own, detective, I guess, and just hunting out places that might be looking. And because it's not as though these type of schools post on a job board, hey, freelance opportunity, we're looking for somebody to do 2 football games. Right, you just got to send out emails to 1 million schools, and hopefully 3 of them get back to you, and hopefully 1 of them says maybe, right? And then you go from there. But that's all it was at Western Kentucky, is sending an email, and that ended up turning into a couple of football games, which are a hard thing to get for somebody in my position, because I had no football TV experience whatsoever, and to be able to put that into tape now, and especially as I'm trying to get more serious about seeing what kind of TV opportunities I could carve out, something like that in a TV demo reel is huge. And that's it. It really did just come down to nothing that I had on tape, nothing. I did nothing to get that except send out emails to like a couple dozen schools, and get no response from most and no's from almost all that did respond. And just kind of get lucky at that point, that somebody was looking to fill, which I suppose is a version of sort of a small example of that thing I just said, which is that if and when you do get that opportunity, when one of those schools does give you something, even if it's not, it's not like Alex Faust getting his one NHL game, it's just me doing one Conference USA football game. But to me, that's like the NHL in terms of what I was doing before, which was D2 football. And it's turning that into, first of all, that they ask you back to do more games. And second of all, can I put this on tape and send this to somebody and find, either use it, first of all, to get better and potentially find somebody who likes it enough to give me another incremental step up and another incremental step up. I think that would be the other part of the advice that I would give to myself, is that you really got to think of the incremental steps as a big deal. Whether it's incremental improvement in your tape or incremental improvement in the gigs that you have. I think you gotta, at risk of pumping yourself up too much, you gotta be kind to yourself about those things, and not be afraid to be proud of the improvements that you do make, because those things are important in order to keep your energy going and keep your drive going, and not get too frustrated by all the no's. The yeses have to carry you.
Right.
And if you can get yourself in that mindset, I think it becomes a lot easier to succeed.
The agent question, where are you on that?
Yeah, so I've had ongoing conversations with agents pretty much since I've got into TV at all. Certainly since the first full year I was doing Mizzou stuff after graduating, which I think is a worthwhile endeavor for anybody doing serious TV work, to get in touch with some agents, especially agencies you think are especially reputable, whether because you've seen them interviewed or heard them interviewed, or because you just particularly like their clientele, and whether that's on air or their clients' personalities, or just the approach they seem to have, even on their website. You can go and read, and they're all going to be somewhat PR boilerplate, but different agencies will emphasize different things in their, mission statement kind of areas. And even if you're not near ready for them to want to represent you, as I wasn't then, you can still get a lot better because of them. You're getting advice from them, whether it's, what can I do with my play-by-play, same as anybody else, or maybe more importantly, what can I do with my demo reel? And those various agents that have not ever wanted to sign me have made a huge impact in helping me improve how I was presenting myself to other agencies, to coordinating producers, to anybody, helping me learn what the TV world wants in an initial demo reel that's supposed to pull somebody in. And I think that, combined with being able to improve on air, combined with getting opportunities to do more sports at a higher level, and build a diversity of the different sports in that reel, has then allowed me to get more seriously on the radar of some of those agencies. And some of them are the initial ones who had very little interest at first, because just because they have relatively little interest in signing you doesn't mean they have relatively little interest in, period, right? It makes sense to them. It costs them very little to maintain a email me every 4 to 6 months kind of relationship. They're spending 20 minutes to an hour every, twice a year, in order to build a relationship that then, if it comes down to it, whether it's this year or next year or 3 years from now, if I get into a situation where multiple agencies are interested, where do you think I'm going to go? Probably to the guy with whom I built a relationship and I built trust. And that, I think, can be valuable to them as well as to me. So that's sort of, again, a long answer, but right now, I think I'm closer than I've ever been. Before everything happened with the virus and whatnot, I think it was likely that I would be signing, at least with somebody. It was still up in the air to some degree. I would have expected probably by now, certainly by the end of April, to have probably done that. Now, obviously, everything's a little bit more up in the air than it was, but I think hopefully those sorts of things will get a chance to get going at some point, whether that be this summer, this fall, whether it be even farther in the future. At some point, hopefully, we're going to be able to get back to normal stuff, and at that point, I think it will be a real possibility. So hopefully that will work out. But again, it's all about celebrating the incremental progress, even in that kind of a situation where it doesn't lead to anything tangible, and trying to get better in all those sort of niche areas that I wouldn't know anything about otherwise.
It's funny, everybody has said, I've mentioned, would love to have you come back and do a panel. Maybe we can do it over 2 years, like half 5 1 year and 4 1 year. I think all 9 will, and there won't be enough time for everyone to follow.
Yeah, no, I mean that'd be a blast.
But everybody wants to do it. So
Yeah, no, I think that'd be really fun, especially because hopefully as more and more time goes by too, we have greater diversity of different things that people have done. I think we pretty well run the gamut in terms of Alex doing a top level pro team. Kevin Fitzgerald is doing network games and has done quite a bit of minor league baseball. Josh Appel is doing national radio games. Katie, obviously, Katie's is one of the youngest reigning winners, and she's doing Flyers studio stuff. And Drew Carter just won last year, and he was doing some BTN hoops games already, and he was on their lacrosse schedule. I don't know if he got to do any lacrosse this spring, but he was on their schedule for that too. So I think there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of success to begin with, and then there's a lot of diversity of success in different paths people have taken in the industry too.